Pirate Software, or Jason Thorhall, was a once beloved YouTube content creator and streamer. His content usually focused on gaming, hacking, YouTube drama, and game development, with his image now being drowned in a sea of controversy. Unlike other classic YouTube drama topics, Pirate Software's drama stems from his massive ego, and as a result he's now losing thousands on thousands of subscribers every single day, which begs the question, what exactly are the mechanisms that led to this? Well, I'm so glad that you asked that, because in this video I want to analyze, explore, and break down Pirate Software's pattern of behaviors and choices that have damaged his credibility and strained his relationship with his audience and viewers, leaving many of us disillusioned. In order to do this, I'm going to examine whether or not Pirate Software's behaviors reflect narcissistic tendencies, and if they align with the official diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, as outlined in the DSM V. And please don't worry if you didn't understand part or any of what I just said. I will explain and define everything that I go through under the assumption that you don't have any prior knowledge of these topics. I do all of this to explain and hopefully answer the question, by definition, is Pirate Software a narcissist? And to be clear, I'm not a licensed professional and I don't have the authority to formally diagnose anyone with narcissism. Even if I was, such a diagnosis would require a thorough personal assessment. That said, as someone who is in their honors year studying psychology, I believe I can offer an informed perspective based on publicly available behavior about Pirate Software, and one that many others have also recognized and agree on. Still, this is ultimately my own interpretation, and I encourage you to decide for yourself whether or not the behaviors and patterns I outline reflect reality. As for a breakdown in this video, I will state the following. First, a very brief summary of the events preceding this drama with Pirate Software. Second, why this topic matters to me and should matter to you. Third, a breakdown of what narcissistic personality disorder is and how Pirate Software's pattern of behaviors fit into its diagnostic criteria with included examples. Next, we'll take a look at Pirate Software's perspective, and finally, my closing statements. These sections are marked in the video, but I strongly encourage you to watch this in its entirety to give you the most representative view possible, as some context is included earlier in the video which will inform later topics. With all that said, let's get into it. In short, this drama started when content creator Pirate Software had a dispute in World of Warcraft with the group he was playing with called OnlyFangs. This was playing hardcore World of Warcraft where tensions and emotions were amplified because you delete your character if you die. Putting it simply, when Pirate Software was playing with the group one day, there was an incident when he ran away instead of helping his team when there was a difficult part of the gameplay.
Just heal me, just come back a little bit.
This is on me, sitting bear form.
Snuppy, just run.
I can help a lot. Yep.
Pirate, why are you walking, bro?
What are you talking about? Why am I walking? Look at my mana.
This is savageable. Come on, man.
Do you see my mana? What am I supposed to do for you?
Just kill the Mastiffs, one shot. Okay, we
More
pulled
than
another. The Mastiffs can be Ice Novas.
I'm dead.
Pirate Software says that he heard a call by someone else to run away and that he could not do anything, but many critics dispute this, saying he obviously should have stayed and helped because he clearly had the resources, or mana, and used them as he was running away to justify his actions for not being able to do anything. So as the drama is at this point, it is extremely petty and it shouldn't matter at all. But this drama started not because of this dispute, but rather Pirate Software's arrogant and abrasive reaction to it, with the consensus being that he was just kind of a dick.
Yeah, if Pirate thinks he did nothing wrong and he played 100% right, I completely disagree with that.
Pirate
I haven't heard
is
this.
supposed to be this voice of a person who's played WoW a really long time, who knows everything, and when it comes down to it, he panicked like a roach and did nothing for his group. And then he doesn't go back on it. He acts like it's the right decision. That dude, holy ego.
Ridiculous.
No reason for that shit. None.
None
what's.
How can you say there's no... Bro, you can't say that, man.
Oh,
Yeah,
dear
I
God.
want to speak to him because I didn't speak to him correctly. I said it again. We all did mistakes, bro. Like I didn't say, we are just blaming you. It's about the zero accountability is what makes us so mad.
There's no zero
You see the
accountability, dude. Everyone can do something better.
you-
But when you open up and you yell over another person
listen,
like you
can
were
I
doing earlier,
speak?
nah, I'm good.
You
See ya. He just wants me to sit down, grovel on my knees and be like, I'm so sorry, Mr. Yamato. It was all my fault, the mage.
This prompted people to look into his other content for this sort of behavior and found several interesting things, such as a very likely cheated playthrough of puzzle game Animal Well, where he seemingly solved extremely difficult puzzles on stream with no help that took a team of people days to solve. Then he said he always had chat on and was working together with chat, which people are rightfully questioning the logic of.
Yeah, people have no idea how to play puzzle games these days. I agree with that. I don't understand the idea of looking up the answers to puzzle games. And you need to not do that. Like, you are robbing yourself of the entire point of the game.
The reaction by Pirate Software to these incidences and more, such as the Stop Killing Games initiative, which we will talk about later, all have a similar theme. in that 1. His reactions fuel and increases the spiraling negative criticism he receives, and 2. He has repeatedly doubled down on his views, repeatedly fails to take an adequate level of responsibility, and is very arrogant while doing so. More examples will be talked about in depth during this video to get a better picture of his behavior. So why does this matter, like, at all? Because to a lot of people, this is just drama for the unemployed. And I completely get that, because I was in that camp for a while myself. However, it's clear that Pirate Software's pattern of narcissism has greatly affected a continually growing amount of people. As one example, I believe the World of Warcraft group OnlyFangs suffered from his arrogant attitudes quite a bit, and was subsequently removed from the group because of it, serving as evidence for his actions being disruptive and negatively affecting people. The sentiment from OnlyFangs members seems to be that his need to control, dismissive feedback, and prioritizing his image over the team's cohesion led to internal fractures and resentment. One message from Sodapop, the at the time guild leader of OnlyFangs, had this to say on screen: "I felt a large majority of people in the guild felt uncomfortable playing or being around him, and all that drama that surrounded him at this point. Even though that some people may have not felt this way, a lot did." Another more recent and ongoing example of a group that has suffered is his fans and viewers of his content. Various reports indicate that Pirate Software has been increasingly removing comments, banning people from his social media accounts, and banning people from his live Twitch chat.
And then there's people that come in and they go, "Oh, it's so funny. I just said mana in his chat and I got banned." It's like, yeah, we've banned 50,000 people on Twitch alone for this shit.
Today we're going for the world record attempt at being banned by Pirate Software. So I'm going to start the timer now. Okay, let's get into his chat. Nope, there's rules. Don't care.
It's so fun. Yeah, I think the worst part about this is like...
And banned. 7.55 seconds. That's the new world record. Let's go.
That code is ass. It's not code, it's configuration. You would know that if you were a programmer, which you're not. Banned. 50,000 accounts so far.
The reason for this seems to be that anyone who disagrees with him is put into a category of being a hater, and is then removed even when the comments are sincere or genuine. It seems that he's also banned certain words that will automatically get you banned from his chat if you type and send it. Similar to rejecting this negative feedback, Pirate Software falsely DMCA'd an indie dev, Brendan Ferrantino, for his game Idle Streaming Bonanza, subsequently having this game removed from Steam for allegedly using his likeness, when in fact it did not violate any regulations for fair use. The contended content in question, Pirate Software's likeness, was not actually in a publicly released version of the game. During one of his live streams, Pirate Software had a message directed to Brendan and had the following to say.
So I filed a DMCA claim and he has now filed a counterclaim against me. We're going to take you to court. You're going to lose. You cannot use somebody's likeness or voice in any way inside of your games without their permission. It's a really stupid thing to do. Incredibly so.
All of this so far reinforces his aggressively egotistical personality and how it has caused harm to others, the mechanisms of which we will talk about very soon. Ultimately, Pirate Software dropped the case, likely due to his grounds being false, but the harm caused is still relevant. I don't know about you, but if I was in Brendan's position seeing all of this unfold, I would be very hurt. Finally, and arguably the most well-known impact Pirate Software has had recently is his impact on the Stop Killing Games initiative, which the consensus seems to be that he has significantly, unfairly, and without understanding enough, advocated against it and significantly hurt the initiative. I won't explain it in full here, but to get a better picture, I do recommend that you watch this video from Ross, the man leading the Stop Killing Games initiative, to see a full breakdown of Pirate Software's impact. Now, aside from the individual harm caused to Ross, Pirate Software's impact could have major ramifications for anyone who buys or plays video games. To summarize simply, the Stop Killing Games initiative aimed to introduce laws and regulations in the EU to make future games playable when the publisher of those games decides to end support for it. As one of many examples, a live service game that will one day just shut down and without warning will become permanently unplayable, which sucks a lot, especially if you've invested time or money into that game. But due to Pirate Software being the largest voice against the initiative, confidently spreading misinformation about how it's bad, all the while being very unfairly harsh to Ross and the initiative.
If that passes, enjoy never playing an MMO again for the rest of your life and taking away from every other person that plays MMOs. It's used car salesman garbage. This is shit. It's shit. Not only do I not want to back this, I'm going to actively tell people not to. That is a horrible goddamn direction. That's awful, dude. No. Eat my entire ass. The level of stupid that I just had to receive was like sitting on Twitter for 12 hours. This shit sucks. That's a really stupid ass move. That's an incredibly stupid ass move. I think this is ass. This is complete garbage. All of this can eat shit then. I dropped the mask entirely. I have no qualms about that. They can eat my entire ass. the whole thing.
It killed momentum for the initiative, and now it's worse off because of it. In other words, because of pirate software, we may now not have regulations to prevent anti-consumer gaming practices. As an aside, while actually making this video, the Stop Killing Games initiative actually surpassed its 1 million signature goal, and pirate software's reaction to this was the following.
So, I'm going to be honest with you. I hope that your initiative gets everything you asked for, but nothing you wanted. And I'll leave it there.
As another example, game companies being able to shut down a game at any time for any reason without notice will continue to be a thing in the gaming industry. This made more possible because of Pirate Software's actions, while offering his usual dismissive and difficult responses, which many believe to be arrogant and abrasive.
That sounds stupid as shit.
All of this hurts me on a few levels. One being I don't like seeing people being treated unfairly and suffer from someone who's being narcissistic or arrogant. That, and your rights as a consumer or buyer of video games simply matters. I'm sure that most people listening or watching this video right now have had personal experiences with someone in your life who has been narcissistic towards you. Even if it was only for a brief time, it has probably not been a pleasant experience. I believe Pirate Software has had a big enough online following that his attitudes have extended far past personal interactions, and we are now seeing the consequences of a narcissist affecting even more than that, your rights as a consumer. That's why I believe this matters more than just some random internet drama. No one likes a narcissist, but whether you're aware of it or not, this could affect you. I don't think that someone who exhibits narcissistic traits should make any calls that could have huge effects on the gaming industry, especially when that person doesn't know what he's talking about. I also want to raise awareness, for lack of a better word, for Pirate Software's bullying behaviors, because he's shown time and time again to belittle and bully people on an individual and group level, which I don't appreciate. He keeps doing it and he keeps getting away with it, and it's not okay to continually hurt all of these people. I want to explain Pirate Software's behaviors so that way his negative impact on individuals, communities, and the gaming industry can be understood and then minimized as much as possible, because I believe he is causing quite a bit of harm and it needs to stop. So let's talk about narcissistic personality disorder. In this video, I'll be using the DSM V, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Illness, otherwise known as the reference book on mental health and brain-related conditions and disorders. The DSM V is written, edited, and reviewed by the American Psychiatric Association. I will be using its criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, which I will refer to as NPD for the remainder of this video, to analyze and explain my thoughts. So, what is NPD exactly? Well, putting it simply, NPD is a mental health condition defined by a long-term pattern of exaggerated self-importance, a constant need for admiration, and a lack of empathy for others. People with NPD often have an inflated sense of superiority, believing that they are special or entitled, and may exploit or dismiss others to maintain their self-image. In order to meet the clinical criteria for NPD, these traits must be persistent, deeply ingrained, and cause significant issues in personal, social, or professional life. And to reiterate from a previous point, I am not a professional giving an official diagnosis. That being said, I do believe that my interpretation is accurate. I'm of the belief that understanding Pirate Software's pattern of behaviors and his motives helps to understand better why so many people have felt harmed or frustrated by his actions. Furthermore, I also want to do this because I believe that Pirate Software, as the man that he is now, as of releasing this video, is very, very difficult to trust. Whether that be about things like the Stop Killing Games initiative or things generally, which we will talk more about later. As an aside, and we will talk about this later, I think that as an individual, you should err on the side of caution when listening to what Pirate Software has to say, because it's very difficult to tell whether or not he's actually telling the truth. So now I want to talk about the exact diagnostic criteria for NPD and how Pirate Software's pattern of attitudes and behaviors fit into it. As written in the DSM V, an individual must present with at least 5 or more of the following criteria on screen now. I'm of the very firm belief that Pirate Software definitely fits into 5, if not more, of these criteria. I will now go through each of these individually and discern whether or not Pirate Software's pattern of behavior fits into them. The first criteria that we're going to examine is a grandiose sense of self-importance, otherwise defined as someone who exaggerates achievements and expects to be recognized as superior without proportional achievements. Pirate Software has often held himself in very high esteem for working at a particular video game company.
That was critiquing you for mentioning you work at Blizzard so much? I literally never talk about it. When I worked at Blizzard, I did that for Blizzard. Blizzard, 7 years, yeah. Blizzard. I used to work at Blizzard Entertainment. Used to work at Blizzard Entertainment. You're red team specialist for Blizzard Entertainment and Blizzard.
Very interestingly, and I do want to emphasize this point, Pirate Software in the past had quite a few tweets emphasizing that he has over 20 years of gaming developer experience. Even more interestingly, he has deleted all of these tweets, yet he hasn't ever made a statement as to why he's done that. They simply do not exist anymore. Now, despite his place of work, he only did jobs as a quality assurance tester and security analyst, all the result of nepotism from his dad, who actually worked in a high position on game cinematics at Blizzard.
I went to Blizzard in 2004, and like, this is kind of my whole career, right? My first job I got through nepotism, 100%. My dad worked at Blizzard for 23 years. He worked at Blizzard for 23 years, so I got a job there in 2004.
But here's how nepotism actually works, which Jason also doesn't understand. It does not look good on your future at Blizzard if you mess with an executive's son. Period. Everybody knows who Jason is. If you write him up, if you fire him for misconduct or otherwise, people are going to know you did it. They're not going to know that anything was actually going on. They're just going to know you were the guy that fired Joey Ray's son, and your career is pretty much toast because everybody in the games industry knows each other too.
I want to say that these jobs are important, but despite their significance, these positions are largely unrelated to game design, so this calls into question Pirate Software's credibility as an actual game developer. Here are just a few examples from people who know what they're doing and what they have to say about Pirate Software's ability to make and design video games.
As a game developer who worked as game engine and tools developer on Helldivers 2,
I'm a C++ developer with 5 years of experience in the quantitative trading space. I've read dozens of books on C++ and over half a dozen books just on C++ design.
he tested what the game developers made, and then the rest of his career there focused on cybersecurity. Again, not game development. They are two entirely different ways of working, and I can see that because for someone constantly critiquing others, his code, while potentially good in other roles, is fucking terrible for game development.
Basically, everything I discussed in this video is stuff you learn in this intro level course. The fact Jason doesn't even seem to have a good understanding or know about some of these things is just baffling. If we consider his 2002 LinkedIn start date as when he started learning about programming, that means as of today in 2025, he has 23 years of experience programming. Yet somehow, he doesn't even seem to understand the most basic entry-level concepts in programming. It doesn't matter what programming languages you use or learned, these concepts like loops and booleans are essentially universal in nearly all languages.
You don't need to add comments here. Having a comment for we have asked the question and question asks equals 1 is totally superfluous, a waste of time, a waste of space. I'm not sure why it was added. If not just to waste time on a dev stream, to spend more time pretending you're coding than watching videos.
With Jason, I'm just left so confused. Like, he's supposed to be a game dev industry veteran, and yet he's making stuff as bad as a complete amateur like Yandere Dev. I've easily done somewhere in the thousands of various code reviews, and I've reviewed code from all sorts of experience levels, from senior software architects to people having done a 4-month bootcamp and having less than half a year's of experience. And yet, I don't think I've ever reviewed anyone's code that was this bad. I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this, but this is genuinely some of the worst code I've ever reviewed.
So with that in mind, there seems to exist this incompatibility with what Pirate Software claims to know about game development versus what many people who know more about him agree on, which is that his reputation as a game developer is largely self-constructed and not supported by his actual work. All of this to say that Pirate Software presents himself as an authority on game development, giving advice on it and boasting about it, when the reality is that he's greatly exaggerating the relevance of his past roles and experience with it. As another example of his grandiose sense of self-importance, this is what Pirate Software thinks about the simple act of apologizing for his arrogance.
Put up a video saying you were wrong with every situation and the internet move on. I am not doing that. I don't give a fuck. Yeah, simply bend the knee and lie about how you feel and everyone will stop bullying you. That's a great idea, dude. Yeah, no, eat shit. And people thought that I didn't apologize. They thought that I didn't care.
No, just say, hey guys. So basically, you know, when you tell the narrative, you start with like, I made a mistake. Everyone made mistakes. I was smug. And then there's a lot that comes after that. How would you feel about just ending it after that first paragraph?
I hate that.
Okay.
I have like an immediate emotionally angry response against that.
Very good.
Because it feels like idiocracy.
He positions himself as someone who has the most valid opinion and dismisses massive backlash as irrelevant and, importantly, views it as not his fault, with his language reflecting extreme confidence in his superiority over others, especially those with opposing viewpoints. This example is also relevant to a later criteria, arrogant behaviors and attitudes, but I wanted to mention it now instead of repeating it later. As a final example of grandiose sense of self-importance, Pirate Software's faked playthrough of Animal Well comes to mind. As while playing Animal Well, he clearly knows significantly more than any average player could, to the point of absurdity.
Wait a minute. It's the lengths.
It's the random poster in the background. It's the random. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you think? Just like that? That's it? Oh, of course it is. Oh, wait, guys. Wait. Chat. This is crazy. I have an idea. And then boom, bullseye on the location, bullseye on the animal, bullseye on the strat. Boom, just like that, instant. I can't stress this enough. These puzzles have almost no connection. He does them all back to back, figures them out immediately.
I don't understand the idea of looking up the answers to puzzle games.
If you're interested in this particular topic, I recommend watching this video from Albino, as he speaks about these absurdities from the perspective of someone who's actually played the game blind. The consensus among many people is that Pirate Software was faking this gameplay to give the false impression that he's extremely good at puzzle games, when in reality he was just cheating at it. I'm of the belief that he does this sort of thing to give the impression that he's just a very smart guy, but in this example, he doesn't have any basis for it at all. I also briefly want to mention that Pirate Software denounces looking up the answers to puzzle games, yet has done it himself, and seems to be changing his story to fit whatever the best narrative for him is. More specifically, he's doing two things that just aren't compatible. While he preaches that you shouldn't look up the answers to puzzle games, he's doing that himself. My point being that he's retroactively changing his story to look like the best person possible in the best light, or in other words, look superior, even when that comes at the cost of lying and deceiving his audience. So, to me, these examples fit very well within the criteria of exaggerated achievements and expectations to be recognized as superior. Preoccupations with fantasies of success or power is defined as constant focus on ideals of brilliance, power, or success. Respectfully, I'm going to need you to lock in for just a minute here. Pirate Software shows fantasies of success for sure. One example of this is again his constant talking about working at Blizzard. We have talked about in the previous criterion how his self-proclaimed achievements are greatly exaggerated at best, and there is a massive discrepancy between what Pirate Software claims he can do in game development versus what he is actually capable of. It seems that not only is his exaggerated achievements of being a game dev a self-made embellishment, but that he genuinely believes it as well.
Your Blizzard stories are fake? Which Blizzard story do you think is fake? Would you like to talk to me or my dad that worked at Blizzard for 23 years that's currently in chat? Which one do you want? That code is ass? It's not code, it's configuration. You would know that if you were a programmer, which you're not.
Believe me, I've looked and we do not have any videos, messages, etc. of Pirate Software ever going back on his claims of brilliance when working with Blizzard or other game companies, despite his peripheral roles in them to game development. So it's safe to assume he genuinely believes in his own inflated achievements and unwavering portrayal of himself as a brilliant game dev, which would fit into a fantasy of success. Belief in being special or unique, otherwise this can be defined as believes they can only be understood by or associate with other higher status people or institutions. I want to again draw attention to Pirate Software's pattern of reactions to criticism, in that he shows overwhelming confidence in his own beliefs even when it's proven he is outright lying.
The one that runs on a smart fridge? It runs at 60 FPS on a smart fridge. Literally runs on a smart fridge.
Pirate Software's number one contention to my recent video about his amateur lighting system was that Heartbound can run on a smart fridge. I debunked this claim in a recent short, proving that Heartbound is actually running on a laptop connected to a Raspberry Pi that leverages the smart fridge as a screen. Now, it doesn't actually matter that the game wasn't run natively by the smart fridge, since it could be run by any device. He even said that it could be run on Mac devices, when Mac support was discontinued over 5 years ago. I'm not sure what's more embarrassing, the fact that Pirate Software didn't know that his game isn't being run natively by the fridge, or the fact that he has now moved the goalpost, failing to simply say that he was wrong, and smug in his original retort.
So when your game runs at perfect performance on a smart fridge instead of a Lowe's, come back and talk shit.
He likes to frame himself as someone exceptional, and this is seen in him bragging about his accomplishments and pushing his self-made successes. As one of many examples we've discussed before, his Animal World playthrough comes to mind, as his sense of telling everyone he could figure out a puzzle falsely is a great accomplishment. In other words, he wants people to believe that he is well above the average when it comes to difficult puzzles, projecting out a version of himself that is special.
In this house, we solve puzzles. And we don't look at the answers. Because where the hell's the fun in that, bud? Wait a minute. Wait. It's the lengths. It's the lengths. I'm not insane. I'm not insane. No. I'm not. I haven't gone insane. That isn't true. We have this block fully sane. Where'd you find the map? It was inside of my bedroom on the wall.
Here's another clip with his conversation with Dr. K that I believe further reinforces that he believes he can only be understood with other high-status people.
See, that's the thing. I couldn't have this conversation with anyone else because it was just polarized and obnoxious every time I tried to have that conversation. And yeah, no, I get that.
So,
I've had issues with that my entire life.
Taking on the information from our previous criterion, I believe it fulfills this criterion in Pirate Software's belief in being special or unique, and with his chat with Dr. K, further reinforcing that he believes that he can only be understood by a select few amount of people. Need for excessive admiration is defined as a constant need for praise and validation. As stated before, I think that Pirate Software faking his playthroughs of puzzle games acts as a way for him to garner admiration from others. Not only that, but his constant pattern of lying to paint himself as the best person possible in every situation further reinforces his need for excessive admiration. Furthermore, I think that it's very clear that Pirate Software shows an unprecedented level of cope that I've never seen before. He shows this impenetrable armor against any negative feedback. It genuinely keeps surprising me because I've never seen such a lack of accountability. We can speculate the why in just a moment, but I want the current takeaway to be that when Pirate Software is challenged for his wrongdoings and arrogance, it attacks his ego, his need for excessive admiration. He does not project any sort of vulnerability, instead he projects absolute confidence and perfection, which is also sometimes called arrogant self-assurance. Moreover, the DSM V highlights harm avoidance as something that is very common in individuals with NPD, and they may act in general disregard for the consequences of their actions. This ties very well into the next criterion, but I want the main takeaway from this one to be that 1. He is willing to project out a version of himself that is fake, all to make himself seem like an amazing and intelligent person in order to receive admiration, and 2. His coping mechanisms of denial, blame shifting, and arrogant self-assurance serve to protect his self-image, while also reinforcing his need for admiration, showing that when he's challenged in any context, the central motivation is preserving his own illusion of superiority, rather than engaging with reality and taking accountability. Sense of entitlement is defined as unreasonable expectations of favorable treatment or automatic compliance. My example for this criterion is just how many people, again, that Pirate Software has been banning from all of his social medias, Twitch, YouTube, etc.
We've banned 50,000 people on Twitch alone for this shit. 50,000 accounts so far.
Please, let me repeat that definition of this criterion again. Unreasonable expectations of favorable treatment or automatic compliance. Now you tell me if this is true. It seems that Pirate Software expects everyone to understand his side, and when they don't by challenging him or asking him genuinely, he outright bans them entirely.
I think he banned me after I wore that roach outfit, because I think people thought I was making fun of Pirate, but I was not doing that because of that. It's because we have the roach emote.
You would know that if you were a programmer, which you're not. Banned.
This in large part could be because he isn't getting the compliance from everyone he wants. This behavior reflects an expectation of unquestioned compliance and favorable treatment, and his willingness to silent dissent demonstrates a rigid demand for control that aligns directly with this criterion for NPD. Exploitative of others is defined as takes advantage of others to achieve personal goals. Recently, Pirate Software was caught on a now deleted livestream where he allegedly set up a Twitch hype train. A hype train on Twitch is meant to be a fun community-driven celebration that starts when viewers send a surge of paid support as subscriptions or bits. As more paid support is given, a progress bar appears, and the more paid support the higher it goes, and so on and so forth. Pirate Software fabricated this entire thing by using one of his moderators, Grandiose, to send a surge of money over multiple accounts, effectively fabricating this entire event. I acknowledge that this topic has multiple interpretations, as Pirate Software states that Kronos is a grown-ass man and he can spend his money however he wants. But even in this interpretation, we still see that Pirate Software is advising his moderator and employee how to best spend money to benefit himself as much as possible. This demonstrates a clear willingness to exploit those around him, in this case a subordinate, for personal gain, consistent with the criteria for being exploitative of others. As in either interpretation, Pirate Software is clearly taking advantage of his moderator to achieve his own personal goal, which could either be 1. Financial incentive, or 2. Fabricating a hype train on Twitch. Initially, I also had an additional argument with Lyric, an ex-piano YouTuber, who alleged emotional abuse from Pirate Software for sexual and financial gain. I cannot in good conscience include this section, because while I believe that there might be something there to talk about, it's also very hard to discern what is truth and what is reality, not with just Pirate Software in this section, but also with Lyric themselves. That being said, if you're interested in that section, I encourage that you check it out yourself, but view it with a grain of salt. Lacking empathy is defined as unwilling to recognize or identify with others' feelings or needs. This in particular is a very strong point that will resonate with a lot of people observing this drama. And that's largely in part because Pirate Software repeatedly shows a disproportionate level of empathy when it comes to recognizing his shortcomings. A very common pattern of behavior that he exhibits is that, typically at his best, his version of an apology is a few words acknowledging his impact, and then 99% of the following content is explaining his view and how it is correct.
Like, it's like you'll say you make a mistake, but that's not what comes across. Right? So if you and I have a fight, right?
So I feel like I'm being direct and other people feel like I'm being evasive.
100%.
Okay.
So I want you to think about this for a second.
I've always had problems with that.
Throughout his talk with Dr. K, several times he mentions how he believes his interpretation of reality is objective, and how everyone else's interpretation of him is just subjective.
I think sometimes the things that I talk about in regards to those types of things is misconstrued as arrogance or boasting, when in reality, I'm just trying to give context.
So that is the problem right there. So I want you to listen to this phrase.
Sure.
This gets misconstrued as arrogance, but in reality, it's this.
Yeah.
That is the most arrogant statement on the planet, bro. Like, tell me I'm wrong.
Okay. I don't see it that way, but all right.
Furthermore, Pirate Software acknowledges that this is something that he struggled with for his whole life, which is as unfortunate as it is informative, as evidence to the longevity of his lack of empathy. As another example that we've briefly talked about before, Pirate Software has shown a remarkable lack of empathy for his previous OnlyFans teammates.
Do you see my mana? What am I supposed to do for you?
Just kill the mass.
Is that all? Is that all we're doing?
Giving you my points.
Okay. You done giving your point? You good?
Yes. I'm
Okay. Cool. You go roll a mage then. See you around.
Listen,
Like
can
you were doing
I
earlier?
speak?
Nah, I'm good.
You.
See ya.
And as mentioned before, with members of that guild, they said that they felt unsafe or uncomfortable around him. Moreover, we see this pattern of behavior elsewhere, such as with his ridicule of genuine questions in his chat or comments that could be construed as challenging him or his actions.
Put up a video saying you were wrong with every situation and the internet move on. I am not doing that. I don't give a fuck. Yeah, simply bend the knee and lie about how you feel and everyone will stop bullying you. That's a great idea, dude. Yeah, no, eat shit. So when your game runs at perfect performance on a smart fridge instead of a Lowe's, come back and talk shit. That code is ass. It's not code, it's configuration. You would know that if you were a programmer, which you're not.
And so I want you to just pay attention to that for a second, because you're doing it again. Why did this blow up? Why did it amplify? Who's to blame for the amplification?
The amplification I could generally say is Reddit and other content creators. Like, I feel very steadfast in that opinion on that.
Furthermore, we can see this again with his over-the-top reaction to Stop Killing Games, where he has doubled down on it like he usually has with his opinions, but as I've played before, he has said this while he has been misinformed about the initiative.
It's used car salesman garbage. This is shit. It's shit. Not only do I not want to back this, I'm going to actively tell people not to. I hope that your initiative gets everything you asked for, but nothing you wanted. I don't give a shit about the initiative, and I'm not going to support it, and you can't bully me into doing so. And that's that.
Which is just rude and unnecessary, especially for someone who the consensus agrees on does not know enough about the initiative to speak about it in that way. And as one final point for this criterion, I find it so incredibly baffling that Pirate Software has received such an overwhelming amount of hate for such a prolonged amount of time, and yet in all of that time his views have stayed exactly the same, with the exception of seemingly taking on a very small amount of responsibility, albeit not adequate at all, which for one probably explains why he's in the exact same place when this drama all began, because nothing has actually changed with him, because he is just so locked into his own viewpoints. But more than that, it is just so confusing to me that he sees this prolonged amount of hate and he hasn't gained any sort of introspective value from it. I don't have the amount of hate that he does, so maybe I don't quite understand. That be as it may, I have been in situations before where I am wrong, unknowingly so, and I have received a moderate amount of backlash for what I have said. And when I received that level of disagreement, my first reaction wasn't to deny the other person's feelings outright, it was actually challenging to me in my own beliefs. I thought maybe I could be wrong in this situation, and I was, and I will continue to be wrong about things as well. So with me trying to empathize with Pirate Software's situation, if I was to put myself in his shoes exactly where he is now, I would find it very difficult to not see all of this huge backlash over such a long amount of time, especially when the outcome, that being huge backlash, keeps happening with different individuals and different groups within different communities, and the only consistent factor would be myself.
No, just say, hey guys, so basically, you know, when you tell the narrative, you start with like, I made a mistake, everyone made mistakes, I was smug. And then there's a lot that comes after that. How would you feel about just ending it after that first paragraph?
I hate that.
Okay.
I have like an immediate, emotionally angry response against that.
Very good.
Because it feels like idiocracy.
So with all that in mind, taken together, Pirate Software consistently minimizes or dismisses the perspectives and needs of others, whether that be teammates feeling unsafe, viewers asking genuine questions, or individuals asking him one-on-one raising valid concerns. His tendency to center his own narrative, ridicule or ban dissent, and dismiss others illustrates a persistent lack of empathy. Furthermore, this lack of empathy reflects a broader long-term pattern that extends across the other criteria we've also discussed. It demonstrates not just isolated incidents, but a sustained way of relating to others or lack thereof that is consistent with narcissistic personality traits. The next criterion, envy towards others, or beliefs that others are envious of them, is one that I can't find a solid argument point for. There are some points and speculations that I could make, however, any argument that I could find that relates to Pirate Software being envious towards others or believing that others are envious of him don't quite align with the criterion, and I don't believe them to be a strong argument, and therefore I don't want to present them. Instead, I think I'll draw your attention to the final criterion, which is arrogant or haughty behaviors. In other words, regularly displaying arrogance or condescension. I think that quite a lot of the content that I've already talked about so far with Pirate Software does also fall under the category of him being arrogant. Some of these points to reiterate include his dismissal of apologies and criticism.
Put up a video saying you were wrong with every situation and the internet move on. I am not doing that. I hate that. Why are messages about them being deleted? Because I don't want that shit in my chat. Lamau with a douche response? No, it's not. And now you're banned too. Not that hard. We've banned 50,000 people on Twitch alone for this shit.
His inflated self-presentation versus his actual role as a game developer.
So I'm second generation Blizzard. I'm the first second generation Blizzard employee that ever existed with the company. I'm also a second generation Blizzard employee. I was a second generation Blizzard employee. I was the first second generation Blizzard employee ever. You would know that if you were a programmer, which you're not. Banned.
His code is fucking terrible.
I don't think I've ever reviewed anyone's code that was this bad.
Dismissive and belittling reactions.
Do you see my mana? What am I supposed to do for you? Is that all we're doing?
I'm just giving you my points.
Okay, you done giving your point? You good? We're gonna take you to court. You're going to lose.
Self-constructed superiority in gaming skill, such as his Animal Well playthrough.
Wait a minute. I'm not insane. I'm not insane. No, I haven't gone insane. That isn't true.
Deflection and blame shifting.
There's no zero accountability, dude. Everyone can do something better. The amplification I could generally say is Reddit and other content creators.
And his overconfidence in his opinions.
Like, I feel very steadfast in that opinion on that. I think sometimes the things that I talk about in regards to those types of things is misconstrued as arrogance or boasting, when in reality, I'm just trying to give context.
For a more specific example, during his World of Warcraft drama, instead of recognizing his shortcomings, Pirate Software had this message directed towards anyone that was making content about him.
And for all the content creators that were out there trying to cannibalize me to boost their numbers for a little while, that may work for now, but in the future, no one's going to want to do anything with you other than other people that also want to cannibalize you. You're going to surround yourself with assholes. That's going to be on you, bud. That's shitty for you, to be honest with you. And I feel bad for you.
And now in the midst of his current drama, he furthermore invoked past authority to justify his current opinions.
Make any damn sense. This is 100% your worst take ever? No, it's not. You know what I did before this? I worked at Blizzard Entertainment. What part of my job was? Banning dipshits that did things like this.
Fuck this guy.
These instances illustrate a pattern of behavior where Pirate Software has exhibited dismissiveness, defensiveness, and a tendency to elevate his own authority while belittling others. In the context of the DSM V criteria for NPD, these behaviors fit very well into regularly displaying arrogance or condescension. Finally, this is not a diagnostic criterion for NPD. This pattern of behavior is also very common for Pirate Software, and it's lying. Particularly, I notice lying in order to enhance his perceived superiority, as in telling one thing, then saying another incompatible thing at a later date, or saying the right thing at a later date in order to sound like we've mentioned before as best as he can. There isn't ever an acknowledgement of the original statement, he just retcons as he desires, and that's that. Most of the things that I'm going to mention here we've already talked about previously in this video, and are only being included to consolidate what we already know. So do feel free to skip this section if you wish.
My father was the cinematic director for Blizzard for 23 years. People think that I got my job at Blizzard specifically because of him. In reality, I only had help from him in order to do my resume. I went to Blizzard in 2004, and like, this is kind of my whole career, right? My first job I got through nepotism, 100%. My dad worked at Blizzard for 23 years. He worked at Blizzard for 23 years, so I got a job there in 2004.
But here's how nepotism actually works, which Jason also doesn't understand. It does not look good on your future at Blizzard if you mess with an executive's son, period. Everybody knows who Jason is. They're just gonna know you were the guy that fired Joey Ray's son, and your career is pretty much toast.
In this house, we solve puzzles. And we don't look at the answers. Because where the hell's the fun in that, bud?
Pirate Software himself made a comment on his video stating, for all the people losing their shit in the comments thinking this was some kind of fake run now, this was 83.2 hours of live stream over an entire week of just playing the game cooperatively with chat, live having fun doing so. Okay, so what he's saying is, it wasn't actually blind, he was having help from his chat, right? The only problem then is that at the same time as he's saying this, he's also saying this in the video itself.
Yeah, people have no idea how to play puzzle games these days. I agree with that. I don't understand the idea of looking up the answers to puzzle games. And you need to not do that. Like, you are robbing yourself of the entire point of the game.
I can't stress this enough. These puzzles have almost no connection.
People thought that I didn't apologize. They thought that I didn't care. Put up a video saying you were wrong with every situation and the internet move on. I am not doing that. I don't give a fuck. The next 5 years, I left Blizzard. I did not reapply, and I went and worked on my own. I did freelance. I did freelance for everything. So I actually went into Second Life, which is a 3D Worlds game, if you've never played it before. They have a language in it called Linden Scripting Language, and I made games in there. I learned how to do 3D modeling. I learned how to do texture work. I learned how to do scripting. I learned how to engage with people that were playing my games. I learned how to do network model stuff. I learned how to do server-related stuff. I did this for 5 whole years.
One thing Jason often does is he claims all QA are developers. First, as someone that has worked QA myself, this isn't true. I'm not saying QA aren't important, but the majority of QA generally are non-technical, and only a small portion are. I'm making this point since Jason often claims he was a game developer at Blizzard for 7 years, but his first 3.5 years didn't include any developer roles. This is a first year, first semester type of course. It's incredibly similar to the one I took during my first year of college. And let's just look at the things you learn in. The fact Jason doesn't even seem to have a good understanding or know about some of these things is just baffling. If we consider his 2002 LinkedIn start date as when he started learning about programming, that means as of today in 2025, he has 23 years of experience programming. Yet somehow he doesn't even seem to understand the most basic entry-level concepts in programming. On October 2019, Jason tweeted that roughly 86% of Chapter 3 has now been completed. Then 2 years later, Jason tweets that Chapter 3 is now 92% done. So over 2 years, he made 8% progress on one chapter. 20 years of game dev industry experience, people, and 7 years working at Blizzard.
So for those who don't understand, the Stop Killing Games initiatives is basically we don't want single-player games to have DRM that the developers can turn off and thus render the single-player games inactive anymore. This is what they want to change. It would impact every live service game that exists, instead of just targeting single-player, always online games.
No, that's not what it is. Stop Killing Games includes single-player games, but nothing about it is specific to them. He completely made that up, and I have no idea where he got that impression.
It is irrelevant to increase performance on a game that runs on a smart fridge.
We notice that the game is actually being run on a laptop and streamed to the fridge using a Raspberry Pi device. In this case, the screen simply acts as a controller. Everything is running on the laptop, and the actual output is just being streamed back to the smart fridge.
I was watching a video that was critiquing you for mentioning you work at Blizzard so much. I literally never talk about it. When I worked at Blizzard, I did that for Blizzard. Blizzard, 7 years, yeah. Blizzard. I used to work at Blizzard Entertainment. Thoughts on the Meat Canyon video? I thought it was hilarious. I'm a big fan of Meat Canyon. I have been for a long time. I used to be subbed to him. I think I subbed to him for like 3 months. We've rated him and shit too. Papa Meat's a good dude. Very funny human being.
Pirate Software has gone on to block anybody who shares this clip with him on Twitter.
I could probably go on about this single topic for tens of minutes. Just by searching about Pirate Software lies, you'll already find a plethora of content for it. Significantly more in quantity and that of quality that I can do here. But I do hope that with the examples that I've shown here, it demonstrates that Pirate Software lies to the point of it being pathological, whether that be about his career as a whole, and puzzle games to garner admiration, the Stop Killing Games movement, or even about recent more little things like the Meat Canyon video and him liking it, despite him adding that to a banned phrase in all of his live streams. We've seen how Pirate Software's lying has harmed individuals, much like Ross or Brendan Ferrantino with his game Idle Streaming Bonanza, that and his deception of his own dwindling community. I'm of the belief that Pirate Software shows this destructive pattern of behavior, and if it's left unchallenged, it will likely continue to harm others, both personally and structurally, within the spaces he influences. I think that it's very important that we also take just a few moments to acknowledge Pirate Software's own individual perspective, because I think that now that we've actually looked at all the criteria for NPD, I think that examining closely what Pirate Software thinks will help to understand where all of this is coming from. Most of the perspectives that I'll be talking about now derive from Pirate Software's talk with Dr. K, which by the way, if you're looking to be a clinician in the future, I highly recommend that you watch that video, as Dr. K does an amazing job of extracting what the issue could be with Pirate Software while collaborating with him as someone who is very difficult to talk with. That being said, what are some of Jason Hall's perspectives? One topic that we haven't talked about yet is how Pirate Software has a fear of losing control. He shares that he often feels that he needs to control his environment, including conversations, social spaces, and audience tone, to feel safe and functional. And this would explain why he frequently bans users who challenge him, even if their messages are respectful. To him, it's not about silencing disagreements, but it may be about maintaining stability in what he perceives as a chaotic or hostile environment. And as mentioned before, Jason admits that he has struggled with empathy essentially his entire life, and has said that while he can understand people intellectually, he often doesn't feel it emotionally. This supports the idea that his reactions may not be rooted in malice or cruelty, but in a disconnect between intention and emotional resonance. One point that I also do wish to highlight is that Pirate Software has been getting tens of thousands of death threats and other very hurtful comments practically every single day for I think hundreds of days at this point consecutively, and that he can't see the value in interpreting opposing viewpoints when it's flooded with so many heavy insults.
And then there's the other side of it, which is you're a piece of shit and you deserve to die. And I'm like, dude, these are so polarized. What am I supposed to get?
Yeah, so he's explained something to the effect of when the majority of feedback is so extreme, it becomes psychologically impossible to separate the constructive constructive criticism from the unfair and outright hate. From his point of view, reading any of this critique, whether it be big or small, is like walking through a minefield, so he defaults to treating all of it as just hostile. I'm not trying to use any of these perspectives to justify his narcissistic attitudes and actions. Rather, the harmful actions that he's causing to others and himself and his own beliefs can coexist at the same time, albeit to his detriment. Because if you dismiss all the opposition, whether that be little or big, as toxic, it prevents any real growth. And when even sincere voices are blocked out and flattened into a category of just hate, Pirate Software creates a self-sealing worldview, one where he's always under attack and therefore never responsible. So while I believe that his behaviors clearly align with narcissistic traits, it's also worth acknowledging that they may be grounded in long-standing internal beliefs, fear, and emotional limitations, rather than, again, just pure malice or manipulation. This doesn't erase the harm or impact that he's had, but it does help to explain why it keeps happening. So let's ask ourselves, is Pirate Software Jason Thor Hall a narcissist? I think that by definition, looking at the diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, I think that Jason Hall meets over 5 of the requisite criterion in order to meet a diagnosis for it. With many of the examples that I've covered, again, spanning years, digital platforms, and numerous communities with consistent consequences. From his time in OnlyFans, to the controversy around Stop Killing Games, to his ongoing dismissal of any feedback on stream and mass banning viewers still unfairly, to his repeated arrogant and egotistical responses, lack of accountability, and outright lies. Each case reflects not just poor decision making, but deeper personality traits that clearly show a pattern of resistance to growth or introspective reflection, all of which are consistent with being a narcissist. I don't see any change to any of these behaviors that I've highlighted in this video over the span of his career, and they serve to not only explain why this drama is so big in the first place, but how he reacts to the drama and how he sustains it. But the problem is, with someone that has these beliefs so deeply rooted, I don't actually believe that they can change. Maybe I'm wrong, and I sincerely hope that I am, because despite everything that I've talked about how Jason is a narcissist and he's angered and harmed a lot of people, including himself, he is still a person. And while I definitely think that he's a narcissistic asshole, and if he doesn't wisen up, his ego will be the death of his career, I would agree with Dr. K in the sense that everything that he has suffered through up until this point is probably sufficient backlash.
We're all human beings who do the best, generally speaking, that we can. Do people make mistakes? Absolutely. Are you allowed to get mad at them? Absolutely. Should you do death threats? No. Stop for a second and think about what the hate does to you, right? Like, you're hurting another human being, but like, for what purpose? In the moment, you feel like, oh, I want to put someone in their place. And I understand those feelings. I'm not even saying that those feelings are wrong. I don't know how else to say this. Like, it's just a bit much. I don't think it's actually helpful in the long run. You guys are doing all this crap to Thor. It's not clear to me that he understands why you're doing it.
That being said, while that's my view, I struggle to see how this drama can change for the better when he keeps adding fuel to the fire constantly. I do sincerely wish Jason the best, and I don't want him to suffer, but I genuinely can't see that changing with how he manages conflict.
Dude probably should have reached out instead of talking shit.
So I decided to reach out. Again.
Why so many bans? A bunch of people coming in here and shitting up the chat with garbage. We're just banning it all.
So I really do think that he's going to continue making these same mistakes. But as unbelievably irritating as that is, I think that we can all agree that wishing for his public beheading and insulting him does more harm to you and nothing productive for him. Instead, if you agree with me and what I've had to say in this video, then I think perhaps the best thing that we can do is just pay him no mind and ignore him. Feeding into the drama may only reinforce his arrogance and narcissism more, and I know that you're more employed than that to care about this drama in that way. Instead, I think the best thing that we can do is take that energy and turn it into support for the things that he is harmed. If you care about it, support Stop Killing Games, support Brendan Ferrantino, support the content creators that he's lied about. Then maybe the impact of Jason Hall, Pirate Software, can be healed somewhat, and we can walk away from this having learned from Pirate Software, and because of that, having learned more about narcissism than what we knew before.
That's it.
If you liked this video, then please subscribe, and then maybe one day my dream of having more subscribers than Guna Goblin will be fulfilled.